Welcome to Aunty K's, your favorite radical queer indigenous auntie, bringing you tarot every day. Hello everyone and welcome to Aunty K's Tarot. So I am doing a tag called Read This Deck, and I saw it on Robyn's Reflections, and it appears that Robyn has recycled and reused this tag. It appears to be about 10 months old, and it is different than the first two, and I liked it. It's fun, and I thought we would do it. So in this, Robyn did a collective reading with a deck that she loves, with something from the guidebook. It was a spread from the guidebook, and this doesn't have a spread, but its instructions are essentially a 3-card spread, and I'm going to go with it. And I chose Fortune Queens because it is one of my favorite decks. And if we're all putting out collective energy right now, my cat really wanted to be here on the table. She likes to be on the tables. They both do. And they tend to snuggle up next to my chest when I'm sitting at the table. But she wanted to be here, didn't ya? Mm-hmm. Yes. And so we have my kitty Buttons. We maybe see more of you, Buttons? Yeah? Aren't you just the prettiest? Yes. Mm-hmm. So Buttons is in the video. Her full name is Buttons the Fierce, and her sister is Frankie the Second. I know, don't you chew them. So I chose this deck. I love this deck. I brought it out on my table this week because I love it, but then I only pulled 1 card predictions on timing for myself. So that was part of choosing this deck. And with the murder of an indigenous non-binary child, teenage high school student next, I thought, using one of my queer decks worked. And this is a fun, happy, playful, queer joy deck. And so that is why I chose this deck. I love this deck because of the art style. I love drag queens. I really dislike RuPaul. He opted to become a colonizer. He owns mass amounts of land that he makes money off of by renting out for extraction. It's like oil companies and stuff. And don't at me that it's not him, it's his husband. Same difference. Same difference. Sleep with dogs, catch fleas. So, that's hard, but that's okay, because, I don't have good connotations with that angel in Judgment anyway. And, I read the Empress like a colonizer that empresses are. And so that's part of how I read the deck. And it's fitting because guess what? That's even if, empresses try to be like, oh, poor me, it's a patriarchy. Or, oh, poor me, white supremacy. They're still leading it. They're still leading colonialism and white supremacy. participating in it. That show is hard to watch. And I haven't watched the last few seasons. It's a hard to watch show because, like, you see all this racist crap happening and Empress RuPaul, like, condoning, participating, instigating, like, it's hard, motherfuckers, it's hard. And you know, that energy fits here because one of the things that has occurred this week is the erasure of Indigenous identity with next. And even though it appears they use the term non-binary and not two-spirit, their queer identity is sacred in an Indigenous culture. And that part of their identity, that sacredness, gets erased when you erase their indigeneity. And that part of anti-Indigenous racism is erasure. And, like, there's layers to it. Like, white queers erase BIPOC queers all the time because it doesn't fit the narrative that the people who wiped out queerness across the globe with colonialism and white supremacy, are the great possessive people who are, you know, giving us queer rights today. Like, and that brown folks and black folks aren't progressive. And so we get erased there. Like, I had to check because no news other than Indigenous news, and I'd seen it on Indigenous news first, informed people that Next was Indigenous, and specifically that they were Choctaw. And but the term two-spirit wasn't used, and frequently it's not used in especially American media. Canadian media has Indigenous journalists, which brings some checks and balances, but American media does not. And but it appears they use the term, the colonial terms. So, but, like, these things get erased, so I had to check, is it being erased or did they use non-binary? Like, there's mixed terms used amongst my children and my family, so, you know, whatever suits each person, right? And a lot of the time what terms we choose to use, you know, in a family, a community, a nation, depends on how the English term for our queer understandings actually fits, like, our individual culture, right? So even though only 2 of my kids are straight, only one of my, because I have 6 kids, 4 queer kids, uses two-spirit because from only one of them suits that definition, but because they're genderqueer. Those of us who are, like, gay and bi and stuff, like, we don't use it. And we each use different terms that really fit what we feel works for us, right? So that gets erased. So then Indigenous folks get erased in degrees. As a light-skinned person, white people accept my indigeneity first. I get erased the least because I validate, because my skin validates pretendians. Then brown Indigenous folks get erased next. And then brown Indigenous folks mixed with other BIPOC brown folks. And I'm separating brown folks from Afro-Indigenous folks because guess what? They get erased the most. So the next group gets erased because white people think that mixed race means and them. like, you know, think of art, folks. Think of your decks. How many times is a mixed race couple in your decks represented as a black or brown person and a white person? Versus, you know, two different racial groups of BIPOC folks. Think about it. I have a quad-racial child. I don't know if there's a better term. And the number of times white people can't wrap their head around the fact that she can be mixed with multiple things and not just whiteness is like astounding. I have to do some adjustments because for some reason this is tippy today. Oh, there's something underneath it. Okay. Yeah, just blows their minds. And then Afro-Indigenous people get erased. And the reason I say they get erased the most, even though it's probably very equivalent to, you know, Indigenous folks mixed with other brown and world Indigenous folks, is because they get erased by other Indigenous folks. Afro-Indigenous folks get erased by other Indigenous folks. So, the erasure of necks by the settler colonial community, be they queer or not, is relevant. Well, that's a lot of preamble that had nothing to do with what I'm talking about. And yeah, it does, I guess. So, we'll see where this takes us, considering what's suggested and recommended here. Okay. It doesn't have a spread in it, so I could have chosen another deck. I have other queer decks to choose from, but I really felt called to use Fortune Queens. So this is by Wano Christiani, and you can get this at EnjoyMyCake. And this is the first edition. Do I have the first? I have the first edition, I'm pretty sure. So it doesn't have, this is what the guidebook looks like. You get told who the queens are on the card, the seasons they were in, the moment or look that this was taken from. You get some upright keywords and some reverse keywords in a picture. All right. Instructions. Hold the cards in your hand. Take a few deep breaths and ask your drag, spirit guides, or whomever you believe is out there communing on your behalf to be with you during the reading. Ask for clear messages that will most benefit your highest destiny path. So we're looking for our highest destiny path as a communal reading. While still holding the cards in your hands, tap the pile of cards several times to spread your energy into the deck. Give the cards a good thorough shuffle, and then cut the cards into 3 piles, put them back into 1 pile again. Now the astral library is open. You are ready to start the reading. Spread the cards on the floor or table. Ask your questions, and then choose the 3 cards you are drawn to. Pay attention to the symbols of the card and the way the card is drawn, upright or reversed. Consult the guidebook and your intuition. All right. We are going to follow the instructions because, you know, when you get your first tarot deck, you're looking for instructions, and you are going to follow your instructions if that's how it went down for you. I didn't learn from a guidebook. I eventually had them. One of my decks had it, but it wasn't actually about reading tarot. It was like the Tarot Sutra or something. That was one of the decks given to me very early on. Anyway, you know, I I would get new decks and I would look at the guidebooks that weren't particularly useful and be like, I want something more. So if I didn't have, like, you know, this is how you pull and read tarot, I'd be looking for that too, right? I actually used to spread my cards out like this, so this works for me. All right, our collective reading. We're going to take you right there on top. Yes, you. Okay. What do we got? The Wheel of Fortune, the Emperor, and the Three of Cups. Do you want to know what the shadow is? Of course we want to know what the shadow is. The shadow is the Ten of Wands. Now I'm just going to take a moment and think about it, because this feels much more like the energy of the deck than the pressure of, you've got 4 minutes left to do this reading, so let's take a moment. I'm glad I took a moment, because I thought, let's read who the queens are on these cards and not just rely on my memory, because I'm 48 years old. My birthday's coming up. It's crazy to me. How did I get this old? You know, like, there's a lot of changes I've seen, especially in organizing, and no, it's not all for the better. It's not all, yay, we've progressed. But, like, there's times I'll be like 10 years ago, and then I'm like, 10 years, bitch. That was my early 20s. It was like 25 years ago. So, yeah, we're not going to rely on my memory. So, the Emperor, we have Bob the Drag Queen. And then over here, in the Wheel of Fortune, we have Gaia Gun. Oh, everybody's in here? They are. So, these are all characters in here. We have Gaia Gunn, Naomi Smalls, Manila Luzon, Latrice Royale, Monique Hart, and Valentina. And then in the 10 of Wands in the shadow, we have Mimi, I'm First, and Indy Farah. And in the 3 of Cups, we have Rolaska Talks, which was, you know, one of the trios. Okay. So, if we are looking this as a collective reading and considering the times and energies that we're in, this world is at a place where, like, things need to change. From queer issues, we can look directly to colonialism, because that's what spread, you know, transphobia and homophobia across the globe, in really specific ways. And colonialism is affecting us in all these other kinds of ways. So in order to, like, turn the tables on the system that is being held up, when we come together in our trios, we really need to examine, when we come together, whose burdens we've decided are, whose burdens are sitting in the shadow card that we're not noticing, that we're ignoring, that we're erasing. And we need to bring the shadow card into the light, and we need to center it. Otherwise, what's going to be recreated you know, is new colonialism on this on settler colonial lands. If we think the solution to colonialism and the genocide it brings is it prioritizes or holds up the settler colonial state, you have to dismantle the settler colonial state in order for the indigenous people to have freedom. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From Turtle Island to Palestine. You can't solve these problems whose time has long passed without those of us who have been put in its shadow. Otherwise, you'll recreate the same trios that leave everyone else behind. And so examining who you've left in the shadows, like, you know, the indigenous identity of Nex is an aspect of that. You know, when we're fighting against the anti-trans hate and, you know, the resurgence of homophobia, that's never gone away, but definitely going to come up to the forefront again. It does always start with tackling trans issues, you know. The first thing that the Nazis went after was trans academia and trans rights stuff occurring, especially in academia. So have we progressed? No. 1920s was discussing and, you know, being evolved and enlightened about trans issues, and then the Nazis came along in the 30s. So no, this is not progression, but this is a rebirth of a cycle that won't go away as long as we maintain the colonialism that started it. You can't just put a better colonial government on these lands and expect it to be better. You can't just leave a settler colonial government with the right to exist without expecting it to attack the indigenous people whose existence disproves a right to exist. And that's part of the issue in Palestine. And we see Western people discussing, you know, well, who should be allowed to rule Palestine and how will we prop up the Palestinian Authority the day after Israel's genocide on Gaza. But no one is discussing, like, what restraints are you going to put on the settler colonial occupation committing genocide? And when you're fighting queer and trans issues in the Americas, it is a part of settler colonialism. And it is a part of settler colonialism. It is settler colonialism to outlaw trans bodies and varieties in gender and sexual orientation and expression on these stolen lands, because Turtle Island is queer land. Indigenous land is queer land. And so those fights go together here. And that's what came forward with these cards. Definitely influenced by the energy I put in when I was talking about why I chose them. So this is Fortune Queens, and this is read this deck, read that deck, something like that. Enjoy and check out the other tags.